Can we start with the Surah Al-Fatiha, please? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You don't have to sit so far, you can actually come near. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. Can I have another salawat, please? اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. Now all of you have got the what we call the schemes of work. And yesterday we looked at the sermon of the Prophet. I promised you today that we would start with the Qur'an. But today we will look at an introduction of the Qur'an. We sort of combine 2 and 3 together and an introduction to Qur'an City. I asked some of you to download good notes as well. Later on at the end, those of you who've got iOS, then maybe I can airdrop the map of Qur'an City to you. Those who don't have iOS, maybe you can download it from the website or we can sort something out. We can email it to you. And then tomorrow I will send you the page for Sura Al Qamar, which you'll be able to annotate as well. Okay. But right now, just a little bit about the Qur'an that we need to know. Very often, when we look at the Qur'an, and like I said, I'm a khoja, very proud of it, we tend to pare and pare and pare and pare. And if somebody were to tell us, what do you know about the Qur'an? I'm talking about myself. We don't know that much at all. So the first thing is to know very basic details. Most of you might know them. 114 surah. It's one surah, 114 surah. Chapter is good, but chapter doesn't quite describe what a surah does. Because the word surah comes from sur. Sur is an enclosure. Now it also referred to the walls that cities had around them. That was one of the inspirations why we created Qur'an City, from the very fact that the word surah comes from sur, which is that enclosure, or the wall of a city. Even the height of buildings were called sur at that time. That's why it's called surah, because it's sort of it's an enclosure. So it was revealed as 114 surah. To make it easy for you and me to recite, the scholars divided it into 30 equal parts. And these were called juz, plural is ajza. We may call them para, sipara, because you come from the Indian subcontinent, we have different words for them. But the Quran was not revealed like that. At the bottom of your Quran, in some of them, you will find, or sometimes at the top, it will say manzil or manazil. So there's 7 manazil. So if you wanted to finish the recitation of the Quran in a week, then you would read 1 manzil, and it tells you where to stop as well. Something that maybe sometimes we don't look at too much is you have what in Urdu or Gujarati we call makra. But in Arabic it's called ruku. It's an ayn. You might see it, right? Now the ayn has a number on top, it has a number at the bottom, and it has a number in the middle. Now how did that come about? The Quran was sent to Russia, to a place called Bukhara. And the scholars there thought, we want to finish this Quran by the 27th of Ramadan in Taraweeh. Some schools of thought, in the month of Ramadan, recite 20 rakats of Taraweeh. You know that, right? So 20 times 27. It's simple, 540. So they wanted to divide the Quran in 540 parts so that by the 27th of Ramadan, they would finish Taraweeh. But they didn't want equal parts. They roughly divided it into sort of subjects, very rough subjects, okay? So 20 times 27, 540. It was called ruku because as soon as they finish reciting it, they go into ruku. It was very simple. So the top of that number, if you look at the ayn, there's a number at the top, number at the bottom, number in the belly. Number at the top is the number of that ruku in that surah. The one at the bottom, the number in that juz. And in the middle, the number of ayat in that ruku. Now these are important things to know. You might think, well, what's the use? As far as the Quran is concerned, Need to know everything about it. We run something called Cupid. Many of you might have heard it. It's QPID, not CUPID. But the first thing we asked is, how old is she or he? What's their height? And I'm thinking, what difference does it make if he's short, tall, 2 years older, 2 years younger? No. We want to know those details. What vocation? What does he do? Even goes as far as how much does he earn? What color eyes? What no? Well, okay, we'll go about that later. But if we're doing that with a human being, the Qur'an, my goodness, we've got to know each detail about it. How many ayat? 6,236. One ayah, so many ayat. So 6236, I mean, you could use it as your phone code. No, don't, because everybody knows it now. But it's numbers like this, or ayat, that you need to memorize and know them. So 6236. If you've learnt one, you got 6235 to go. It's one crossed off. Right? 77,807 words. Okay, these are little things we need to know. If I asked you how many players in a football team, you know that. So we've got to know this much about the Quran. These are just some basic details I'm going in. The Prophet said, Allah will not punish the heart which internalizes the Quran. No punishment at all. When I say internalizing, I mean, you got to make sure it's inside you. And one of the ways of getting something inside you and me is to know some of the little details about it. It's really important, right? Sometimes we think, it's not important. I think it is. So let's start with the book, Qur'an. We call it Qur'an. It's not Quran, or it's not Quran, it's Qur'an, right? Comes from the Arabic word qara'a, which means to read. And yesterday we talked about this. Read, internalize, understand, apply, and teach. I repeat again. Read, understand, or read, internalize or memorize, understand, apply, and teach. That's what it literally means. Your children will probably be drawing around their hands and writing on it and whatever they do with it. But for you and me, it is really important, every single ayah, to be able to do that. If you're reading Ajza, I know when I was a child, we would compete who would finish that juz or sipara. And we would finish it and say, finish the whole Quran. But yesterday I talked about it. One ayah equivalent to a whole Quran in other months. So really important, even if you take the first ayah of every juz and try and understand what's trying to tell me. How can it apply it to my life? How do I change it in my life? And like I said, hopefully, and I really hope so, that you will start annotating your Quran. I will send you, when we do Sura Al Qamar, we'll talk about little bits and pieces. But I'd like to talk about a couple of other things. So one of the things I'd like to talk about is what is tilawa and what is qira'ah. Because you say this is a qari, right? Somebody who recites. Then we say something called tilawa. What is tilawa? So tilawa can be softly done, as in audible whisper. Qira'ah is normally loud, right? Qira'ah is always done with the text in hand. Tilawa is done even without the text in hand. But always, even if you know a surah, you memorized it, look at the words of the Quran, because your eyesight will get better. It has a phenomenal effect on your eyesight. Get your children to read. That's why we insist on them reading, or we get them to read that as well. Now the word tilawa, you find it in the Quran, comes a lot of times. The moon follows the sun. It literally means to follow. So when we say, do you have to do the tilawat of an ayah, it means you got to follow it. You're going to make sure, somehow I brought it into my life. And I'll talk about some things that make it a bit easier. So let's look at what Imam Sadiq says. And he talks about the rights of tilawah. He says, number one, you got to recite the verses. We insist for the children to learn how to recite Quran. All of us do. As children, I don't know, maybe you, even when I was a child, even though my parents or my grandparents may not have explained the understanding of Quran, they definitely wanted me to recite it and recite it properly. And I've been doing this for a long time, I'm totally against the fact where you say children going, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and they go, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Don't do that. Teach them the right. Children are amazing. They can pick up so quickly the right way to recite. It's not cute, because when they grow up, they haven't got it right. I'm talking about me here. If we have grown up saying the word Dhad as Zwad, or if we grew up saying Tha as Sa, if we grew up saying Ta as Toi, because this was Urdu and we learned that way, this is what our teachers taught us, then time to change. This is the word of God. Let's try and recite it the way it ought to be recited. That's how it's supposed to be. So if I change, my children will change. I think you're probably fed up with me saying this, but even when we say salawat, we say Allahumma salli ala. I'm going, there is no A in Arabic. It's either A, E, or U. So it's Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's a simple thing. But to get that right and to get our children to pronounce it right, it'll be good. So Imam says, the first one is recitation of its verses. The second thing he says is understanding its depths. So actually pondering over an ayah. I'll take one. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, right? All of us recite it. So if I were to tell my child, say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim before you do anything, I need to teach him Asma'ul Husna. Because be, with, or in. Ism is the name or the attribute of Allah, and Allah is Allah. I'll just say Bismillah for starters. So if I were telling my child, please say Bismillah before you drink medicine, I would hope my child would substitute the ism with Shafi or Ash-Shafi. If I were to tell my child, I don't know, before you're studying Qur'an, then Al-Alim. Or you could do something else. Or before whatever you're doing, you need to know those Asma'ul Husna. How are you going to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim without knowing the ism? And that's just one ayah, just one. I will go over different bits about it. Okay, so 2 is understanding its depths. 3, acting on its rules. So I suggest, take your Quran, go through all the ayat that begin with Ya Ayyuhan Nas, O human beings. Go through all of them, highlight them. Let's pick. Ya Ayyuhan Nas, Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. Indeed, we have created you from one man and one woman. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And we made you into different tribes and communities so that you know each other. So he's telling you and me, I've created you diverse. Your Khojas, non-Khojas, white, green, blue, black, whatever. Doesn't matter, tall, short. And he says the diversity is been created by divinity, so we're able to know each other. In other words, he's saying embrace diversity. That's what he's saying. But then he says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most honored with Allah is the one who is the most God conscious. Doesn't matter who you are or what you are. Doesn't matter where you come from. He says God consciousness. And maybe we'll talk about it when we come to Sura Al Qamar. Imam says number 4, have hope in his promises. I love this one. So maybe you could write 1434. Please write it down. Just 1434. And then go to that ayah when you've got time. And he says, we give you whatever you ask for. And I'm going, really? Are you serious? But that's his promise. وَآتَاكُمْ مَا كُلِّ سَأَلْتُمُوهُ. We give you whatever you ask for. Think about it. Ponder over it. So hope in his promises, fearing his warnings, taking lessons from his stories. There's so many stories in the Quran. Sadly, we just take them as stories. We teach them at madrasa and workshop and everywhere, and we do all these beautiful worksheets. But there are so many lessons to take from them. Lessons of trust. Let's just take, I'll just take a very random example. Let's take Prophet Musa. I love him. He's the most mentioned prophet in the Quran, you know that. And he's known as Kalimullah, talked a lot. People who talk a lot are remembered more. People are quiet, not remembered that much, okay? So Musa really talked a lot. So here's Musa. He's got these people, pretty stubborn people, okay? Bani Israel. I mean, not too far away from the Khojas, okay? Hey, they've got their set ways, all right? So here we are, Bani Israel with Musa. Fir'aun coming with an army at the back. Yes, you all know that. Coming from the army at the back. There is the Red Sea in front of them. So Prophet Musa is sort of standing there, and the Bani Israel are going, oh my God, that's it, we're gone. We were so much happier back in Egypt. At least we got food and drink and we had jobs, and you brought us here, we've got nothing. These people at the back, they'll kill us, and there's a river there. What does he say? He says, Inna ma'ya rabbi sayahdin. Please remember this. It's Surah number 26, ayah 62. Whenever you feel that you're stuck between two things and you don't know how to get out, Inna ma'ya rabbi sayahdin. So he tells Ibn Israel, just needed one person. He says, Inna ma'ya rabbi. My Rabb is with me. Sayahdin, he will show us the way. And immediately he's told, strike the sea with your staff. Oh no, they said, we can't have one path. We are 12 tribes. We need 12 paths. So you've got a way out, but they still want 12 paths. He's told, strike it 11 more times. There's 12 different paths that come over. But this is the trust that this teaches me. So with you and me, do a tasbih. Anytime you're stuck, and say, you heard Musa, I'm stuck, something behind me, something in front of me. Inna ma'aya rabbi sayahdin. Just remember these little things. So he says, take lessons. He says, follow its commands and stay away from haram. That's all included in tilawat of Qur'an. So when yesterday we looked at the sermon of the Prophet and he said that if you if you do the tilawat of one ayah, it's equivalent to a whole Qur'an in other months. That's what he was trying to tell you and me. That's what you and I have to do. So what did we do? So we found that the children, especially those at workshop, I found that the Qur'an to them was just something that they read at Qur'an time. And the only other stories they knew, maybe they knew Prophet Nuh because of the ark. They might know the she-camel of Saleh because their teachers drew them a camel. But anything that wasn't made into a worksheet or something, they didn't know. And you ask them, what surah of the Qur'an is number 16? I'm asking you. What is 50? What is 66? And they would go, don't know. And that was a problem that sort of played on the mind, and we thought, it's not working. Something is not right. Because through generations, we've just been reading the Qur'an without understanding it. And the children are too smart these days. We were smart too, but they're smarter, okay? They're not going to just accept things just like that. So we had some Lego that was left around, and we built a city. So the city is called Qur'an City, which many of you know. I'm just going to introduce it to you because I'll send this map to you. So we built a city, and we built the city based on the morphology of Medina. When the Prophet built Medina, there was a lot of thought that went into how to build that city. So we studied the morphology of Medina and then built this city. So all I need you to remember is that this city has got 114 buildings. It'll never grow, it'll never downsize. The length of the buildings is according to the number of ayat in that particular surah. So you know that the tallest building in the city will be Baqarah, and the shortest will be Kawthar. So we built it out of Lego. We made sure that because there are 86 Makki surah and 28 Madani surah, that there was a differentiation. Now, you got to know this, because every time you read the Quran, you will see Makki or Madani. Makki surah, you can imagine 86. And they talk about the why of religion, or you might want to call it usul, Tawheed, Nubuwah, and Qiyamah. Incidentally, we added Adala, but that's part of Tawheed. We added Imamah because that's divine guidance added to Nubuwah. Okay, so we normally when you go to Madrasa, you say Tawheed, Adala, Nubuwah, Imamah, Qiyamah. But in essence, there is Tawheed, the oneness of God. There is divine guidance, which combines Nubuwah and Imamah. And then you've got Qiyamah, which is accountability. So you find most in Makki surah, some of the ayat have some Makki and Madani and some Madani and Makki. But in general, Makki talk about the why of religion. There's 86. The demarcation line is Hijrah. Makki revealed before Hijrah, Madani revealed after Hijrah. But then to beautify this foundation of Makki surah, you have the Madani ayat or Madani surah as such. And these talk about the how of religion. Sadly, we focused on the how and we forgot about the why. So if you ask the children and I'm not talking about you, I'm sure you're all really smart on this, but when you ask about the children, what do you know about usul? They say one God, I don't know, 144,000 prophets, 12 imams, maybe God is just and we will be accountable. And that's it. Yet 86 surahs of the Quran are focused on the why of religion. If you don't understand the why, the how is never going to come around. I'm not going to tell you to put up your hands, but often if I don't understand the why, I don't even understand my salah. I pray because I have to. I stand up, I read the surahs, I go into ruku and sajda, and I don't understand it. And that is why it is so important to understand the why. So we built this city, and the Makki surah have yellow roofs, the Madani have green. Simply because there's a green dome in Medina, and there's yellow embroidery on the Kaaba in Makkah. There wasn't any rocket science there. So the children knew that's how it was. We then divided it into suburbs. So we had a city center, which talked about the Quran, and then all around the city center we put sort of different suburbs, and 19 suburbs we put there. So the children would know Hamidat, these are the surah that start with Hamd, Musabbihat, which starts with Subhan. They would know Qul Kona. There are 5 surah of the Quran that begin with Qul. And there was Huruful Muqatti'at, and so on and so forth, which inshallah, if we get time, we will do a little bit at a time as we go along. But the city was an ideal opportunity to teach these children about the Quran. So we made the city, put it in the middle of the corridor, and left it. Every time the children switched classes, when they go from Quran to their normal class, they would look at the city and they would ask questions. What's this? Why is there a helicopter on number 17? I'm asking you. Isra, okay? So that's talking about Isra wal Mi'raj. So we added little bits, and the children wanted to add bits as well. And we found that curiosity extended to the adults as well. So that's how Qur'an City was born. But it contains all the surah of Qur'an. I'm hoping that we will have this session that we talked about, where you'll be able to learn these surah of the Qur'an. So I'm hoping, but by the end of Ramadan, you will know the 114, and you will know which suburbs they go into. Now we had another problem. How do you connect the suburbs? So we connected them with a road network called M14. 14 Masumin. We wanted the children to understand that you cannot understand Quran without the Masumin. There is no way you can do it. If you want to understand Quran, you must know the Ma'sumin. You must know their ahadith. You must learn from them. So we have a book called Tafsir al-Askari, which is a tafsir by the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. So it was those little things we want to encourage them to know. Now when I say children, I pick on them because my mother always taught me that if you want to tell your daughter-in-law something, you tell your daughter. So when I want to tell mom something, I can't tell them because they all think they're smart. So I pick on your children, okay? Now you know where this message is going, okay? So that was the M14. And then to enter this city, you needed visas. I mean, you needed to know how to enter. You could not enter if you did not do wudu. So you're insisting on your children to do wudu. You could not enter if you did not recite A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You would not enter if you did not say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You would say La ilaha illallah. And then you would have the dua of the Prophet, which was Walzam Qalbi, and I'll put it in English basically. I want to fall in love with this book. And these are the sort of things that we encourage children to do. We put 2 guides in Qur'an City. One was Hizkil and one was Habib. So you know Hizkil and Habib, right? Okay. I know you know them, but I'm going to just tell you so you remember them. So Habib al-Najjar is from Surah number 36, which is Surah Yasin. He's known as Mu'min Ale Yasin. Phenomenal person. Absolutely phenomenal. We read Yasin every day, and we say that he ran from the outskirts of the town, and he came running in, and he told his people, why don't you want to follow these messengers? And they killed him. And what happens to him? The moment he is killed, Qila dkhulil Jannah. Into Jannah. But he doesn't say, yay, I got there. He says, قَالَ يَا لَيْتَ قَوْمِ يَعْلَمُونَ بِمَا غَفَرَ لِرَبِّي وَجَعَلَنِي مِنَ mukramin. How I wish my people knew how my Rabb gave me this honor. Just by being able to listen and follow divine guidance, which for you and me it means the Quran. His gil is known as Momina Ahle Fir'aun. He supports Prophet Musa in the court of Fir'aun. He actually talks to the court as well. He was not only associated to Fir'aun, also was related to him. So we put Hiskil and Habib over there. So these are things that you could build with your children and hopefully learn the Quran together. The joy is just phenomenal. Can you imagine? You just built that city and He will not punish the heart that internalizes the Quran. At the end of the day, the Prophet said, as we read yesterday, the most unfortunate person in this month is the one who is not forgiven, right? And here he says, you're forgiven totally, provided you internalize this Quran. So as far as Qur'an City goes, inshallah we'll try and arrange a morning, from morning to evening that you can join me. But from tomorrow, I'm going to look at Sura Al Qamar. Now in Qur'an City, we put Sura Al Qamar right at the top. So you've got Qur'an City, and then you've got Sura Al Qamar at the top. We put it right at the top, because it's Qamar, it's the moon. Our whole calendar revolves around the moon. And 4 times Allah says, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَحَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Is there anyone who will put the tiniest bit of effort into this Quran and I will make them understand it, or will make it easy for you? So inshallah we will start with Surah Al Qamar, finish Surah Al Fatiha and the dua for protection. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'een. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. لي 5 عطفي بها هر الوباء الحاتمة المصطفى والمرتضى وأبناهما والفاتحة.